Hello and welcome to another plugin review. This time it's buttons. Buttons a little bit more complex, so this will be a little bit longer video, and you will find also a little bit longer blog posts about the plugin on my blog, which I have linked in the description, and there will also find the links to the other videos I did and which I cover here, which is Todoist and Embedded. And you will find the link to the multicolor markdown plugin, which I'm using also in this video. So let's start. Buttons is something to automate and make your life easier in Obsidian by creating buttons. So let's take a look at them. There are several different things you can do with buttons, and we go first over the basic examples, what you can do with it, and then we go into more advanced examples and then tips and tricks, and then we wrap this thing up. So the nice thing about buttons is that it has a button maker, which you can start via the command palette. And then you can give it a name, and you say a command, and then you can start typing the command you want to do. And let's say we want to open the graph view. And then it has a button ID. The button ID is automatically created by default. You can delete it. It's not needed all the time, but sometimes you need it. And you can give it a custom button ID if you want to. The button ID, it always starts with button dash and then afterwards reference. That's important to know because you need it afterwards and things. And then you have all the advanced options where we go over. And the sample how it looks like, and then you can do insert button, and then you have the graph with the button ID, which is random. And if you click on graph, it will open up the graph because it was create a command, right? Run the command. And let's do the same in blue, and that's the other way. Buttons are code blocks. So you can just copy the code block, put it somewhere, make the change you need or want, and then you have a blue button, right? So two ways to create them. One is by the button maker, and the other one is by copy pasting or writing them on your own. What I normally do is I use the button maker to create the button itself, and then I go in and make some changes if necessary, or just copy paste it from somewhere else if needed, and then adapt the code and from there also. The other button type next to the command type is the link button, and we have our Tom from Supercharged Links. And when you go and select copy Obsidian URL, you can use the link button to create a button which opens Tom, the node. But you can also, of course, open a URL with it. Let's take Tom though. So the link will do a URL or URI, and you can just paste it in there, and then you have a Tom button. And if you click on the Tom button, it will open a node, right? If it's a URL, it will open up the URL in the default browser, and so on. Very simple and nice and fun. I use that, for example, to open up my daily notes or any other specific notes. So let's take a look at the calculate button. It is a little bit weird. Your mileage may vary if you use it, and examples I have really show the problems you can run into with the button. But yeah, I don't see a need for it for myself, but you might have a need. So let's take a look at it. Calculate 2 plus 2 is 4. The result is 4, which is one of the issues. It's always a result colon 4, always at that part. So the one thing, it's a name, a type calculate, and the action is 2 or 2. Buttons uses natural language math. There's a link in the description for that. And you can use that also later on in a natural language to calculate. That's calculating with the numbers inside of the button, but you can also say, oh, I have the numbers somewhere, and calculate it with outside of the button. So I created the button, and it tells us we should check the lim numbers because, yeah, the line numbers. And then there's the point. So at the moment, it looks for the first line and the second line. First line minus second line is the calculation. So this is not the first line, and that's not the second line. So we need to go and check with the editor, enable line numbers. And then we see it's 45 and 46. So we can edit it and say we would like to have 45 minus line 46, and then we can calculate it. And then nothing happens. It works, but nothing happens because it is 0. If you do 5 minus 4, you have a result 1. So that's a bug. I'll put it up on the tracker. We will see when it gets fixed. So that's another way to do it. You can use the lines and specify where they are, and then you can get the result. And then you can use this natural language math. So 5 dogs plus 2 cats divided by 2 people. How many pets do we get? First of all, the line is wrong. It's line 59 now because we edited. Even if we had it before, we edited the result, so it moved it down. And it's 6, which is okay because it's 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 5 plus 1 is 6, right? It's math. You can take a look on the link, like I said, I provided what you can use as names. You can do an add and a subtract and so on, and it works. It is in English only though, which might be a problem. So that's the calculate button. Very simple. I don't know if you can use it. I can't use it. I don't know any reason why I should use it. But like I said, up to you. And then there's the swap button, the crazy swap button from the example from the webpage. So what you define there is that you have buttons with button IDs, right? Button _-2, button banana, button pet. And then you use the button ID, but only the part after the dash inside of the array. And now when you click the button will cycle through these 3 different buttons. If you do it that way, it says swap arcs only available inline buttons. So you have to have the button swap, and then you have to have an inline button, which is the one with the left-sided apostrophes, or whatever you want to call it in English. And they only work in view mode or read mode. So you can use them then. And nothing will happen because it's a calculate button, right? And you are in reading mode, so you cannot edit anything. So it's a stupid example I'm using there, but it brings back the point. It doesn't work with everything. First off, you need to be in read mode. You can use callouts, but it depends if they work or not. And you always have this callout thing around it, and you can use the embedded. And the embedded is pointing me to the wrong document. That's nice. So it shows up how you can use a button and open up a different vault even. Nice thing, it just works. And it's reasonable, right? Because it says I would like to open up the file, which is in Deutsch, which is the German vault, but we would like to have it in English. And it's not Spielplatz, it's the playground. You will see in the German version of this video, I played around with a lot of other issues like that there too. So troubleshooting all the works. So if I go to the embedded inside of the English vault, you see the crazy swap one. That's because I have a header swapped embedded, and in there I have the inline key button. And there's then two things. The first time we do a result is 2 plus 2, right? Nothing happens. The second time we do it, it is the calculation with the line numbers. And now we get an error message like, oh, the line numbers are wrong. So, like I said, calculation is not a good example, but it shows the problems. The embedded executes the button out of the button node in the context of the node we are in. So it would look, if it would work, in this node for the lines. The other problem is that it would then, if it would work, add the text, the result underneath the button, which is inside of the embedded code block, so it will break the embedded. The same happens when you do an append or prepend button with text. You cannot really do it with the embedded. So this mainly works for opening up other nodes or executing commands or stuff like that. So otherwise, it doesn't really work. That's the limitation there. So I guess that the plugin developer will fix that in the future, that we are not relying on inline buttons anymore for swap and for other things. And the workarounds, it will depend on if you can use them or not. But it's a possible solution. And then last but not least, the last function which you can do with buttons, and that's the most powerful one, which is normally I'm using, is append, prepend, add a line, or create a new node with text or a template. And I normally do templates. I don't really do text. So for example, here we have append text, and then text goes here. So the text which you have there will then be appended below the button. And that's not true with text, because it gets added underneath templater. For whatever reason, I had the same issue in the German world. It doesn't make any sense to me, because templater is the end of it's the last header 3, and we are in a header 2, header 3 example, so it's not even the last header of that section. It is just, I don't know, it's the same location like on the German world. I don't know why. That doesn't happen when you do a template. So when I add a template to there with the button maker, log2, and I say template, I would like to append it, and I say no template available. Ooh, that's a problem. Let's take a look. And it should work. So templates come from the templates button plugin, which is not configured correctly. Oh, that's the reason why. So I have several templates and templates. And if you have configured that, the button maker should work. Because it pulls the templates from the template directory. Either the core or the templater plugin. If you want to have the templater plugin, you need to disable the core for sure. Both at the same time doesn't work. Append, and then you can take a look at it. And I only have default buttons, which is strange. Let me take a look. I only have default buttons. Oh, give me a second, please. So, back again. I edited some templates. And we try it again. Log2. We would like to do a template. We write to append, and let's say the log template. We ignore everything else and do insert button. So button ID isn't necessary, and it's just append template. The other one was append text, and then the action is the name of the template you want to attend. And if I now click on log2, it just puts it directly where it. So append template works. Append text is weird. I know, I have no idea. I normally do append templates. For example, in my repeating meeting, I have a button. When I click on it, it will then load a template which has the date stamp in there, the time, participants, and so on for the next meeting. So that helps me to create new entries into my repeating meeting note. You can also define the lines where you want to create it. At the moment it's 69, that's the default. Let's say we want like to have the weather at line 118. So you can do it with template, you can do it with text, you can click on it and then it puts in that there is weather outside. It's a German one, but it put it in here, right? There is weather outside. So it's a way to do it for a specific line. If you know the line number, or you can just append it or prepend it to the button. So it's normally on top of the button or below the button. What I also normally use is a new note. So you can create a new note with a template. Again, the name of the new note will be meeting. That's what is in the parentheses. No, the brackets. It's brackets in English. And if you click on it, it will create a meeting note. And it may create it next to it or in the same note like you have seen. And then there is an option with a comma split in the brackets. And this will then create the note in a new column, which is by far, I think, the better way so that you can have it directly, which is a nice way to do it. And that's what I also do in my homepage, and we will see that later on when we talk about it. So those were the default things you can do with buttons, right? Mainly I use it to run commands. For example, I have the daily notes opener, so I can run a command to open the previous daily note, or I open up URIs, and URIs could be a note, and we see the power of that a little bit later downstairs, down the road in the document, or it could be a URL, and so on. So yeah, it's quite powerful, and I use this adding or creating new nodes from a button. There are some more examples what you can do, and let's take a look at those. The first option you can do, and you can create it even in the button maker, is the remove plugin. Let's call it vanish, and this is a command, and we open up the graph view again, and we say remove. Remove true, you see that later on, removes only this button. If you have an array with the button IDs, and again, that's just the part behind the slash, it will remove those buttons. So when you have a meeting, for example, or a template for meetings, and you would like to create a meeting for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, you create 5 buttons, and you can click on one of the buttons, and then it will remove all of the other buttons too, right? So that's perhaps an idea you can do there. And it's just really it didn't even do it. You just do remove true. And if you then click on it, it will open up the graph. Okay. And if you go back, it should be gone. It didn't work. Why? I honestly should stick to the examples I did use before, and which I know they work. I really try, but it doesn't look like I'm that intelligent. Finish. Let's do template, append, the log, and say remove, it is true. You can see you can select the different buttons from there. But we wanted to have it true. And we do an insert, and then we see that now it is remove true. It looks like that the command one didn't work, and you click on it and it has lock template, and then after a time the button vanishes. And this is one of the quirks you have with buttons, is you can spam a button. And if you spam a button, either this one or the templater version afterwards, or any others, it can have weird results. For example, sometimes it happens for me that the button will not only be removed, but also the text around it will be removed a little bit more. So you should look out there a little bit that you not spam it. The other option is replace. So we had the option to add a line, right? And what you can do with replace is that in those brackets you specify the starting line and the end line, and instead of inserting the text at a specific line, it will override specific lines with your insert. Which is perhaps sometimes what you want to do. So that's the replace function. And then we have inherit. And inherit is, again, quite okay. Especially it might be a way to do a workaround for default buttons. Like with the swap button, right? We can define a button, and then we have an inline button which references this. And so you could define a swap button in the default place, and then you have the default buttons, and then you can use them somewhere else. But like we saw, read view mode only or workarounds. But what you can also do is you can inherit stuff. So I inherit everything from banana, and I can even get rid of type calculate. I should be able to do that. And I just say it's a banana, but I have it in green and it has a different number. And if I click on cucumbers, the result is 1. Which is what banana does, right? Banana is a calculate button, line 45, 46. And cucumber, it's just using the same code, except that it has a green color and a different name. So you can create defaults and use it with inherit as a way to have default buttons. That's just one of the workarounds you can use beside the other workarounds I will show you later on. There's then the next one, which is class. You can specify a class, which is a custom style sheet class, and you can then color the button in a different way. For that, you need to have a file in the .obsidian/snippets folder, and you have to enable that file with the custom style sheets in appearance CSS snippets, and then the button gets the color or the other formatting you want, right? It's quite okay, nice, especially if you want to have a different color than red. Like this is my red for my template. So you can also do everything else like you can do with custom style sheets. And then again, last but not least of the advanced options, templater support. And this really makes it a killer feature. If you have templater installed, you can use templater or templater functions to make changes. And you specify templater true, and then you see a bug, and I don't know why that is, because I had that in the German vault also. So you can specify, if you have templater true, you can specify templater functions. So if I specify templater do now, and then say HH for hour, and square bracket, and underscore, square bracket, and then MM, and then I close this one, and I I finalize the templater function. TPT date now. What happens is with templater true, it will execute the templater function, which means it will, when I click on it, it will use the hour_minutes to create it, to name this node afterwards, and it will call in the template. So I clicked on it in 1301, which is wrong because we have 1341, which is a little bit weird. It should work. Why is that way? I have no idea. That's wrong. Oh, that's working. MM. Oh, MM is months. My bad. Okay, you should know the abbreviations. So you can create it. There's a problem with that, and you saw that. Sometimes it happens that those functions are overwritten by the result, and then you have to re-enter them. So you should probably document what stuff you have in those buttons in a way that it's not being edited. It was the same case in my other vault, in the German vault, and I don't know why, honestly. Sometimes it happens, especially when you double click on it a lot of times. Spamming the button, it can just override it, and then you are there. Okay, so those were the advanced examples of using buttons. And then I have some tips and tricks. One of them, the buttons next to each other, that's from the plugin page. But there are also some other walls or posts in the forums, but I haven't found really good examples of other tips and tricks except the ones I have here. If you have other tips and tricks for using buttons in a cool way, just let them in the comments, and then people can participate there and see what it is. So let's say you want to have buttons next to each other. That's the first tip and trick. And in preview mode, that works, right? So you have 1, 2, and undefined, which should be the 1, 2, 3 button. Undefined is because there is no blank line after the button ID, so something you should watch out for. And if you go back, you have 1, 2, 3 undefined, because you have to close it and open it up again. And if you do that, go into, you have 1, 2, 3, right? So refresh the node, closing it out, and then that allows you to do that one. And the other one is by using, again, the embedded in the English vault. On the playground. And there you have buttons next to each other, 1, 2, 3. And they work. It's because it's just open a new tab, all of those 3 things. Right? That's how you can do them next to each other. So that's the workaround. And this works if you have something like that, like creating a new node or something like that with the embedded, to allow you to have buttons next to each other without using, the reading mode, right? You still use the inline button feature, but you don't need to use the reading mode for it. So that's from the original plugin. The other thing when I have on my homepage, which I'm using in Obsidian, is I use buttons in columns. Let me show you how my homepage looks like. So I have a homepage, and it's yesterday, it's from the log from yesterday, I have the weather from yesterday, I have my habit tracking for the last 2 days, and I have those buttons here. In these columns, in these boxes. And then I have today, which is files from today, the temperature from today, and the schedule and the daily log. So this is being done, part of it with embedded, part of it with data view. And the same is from the to-do side. Again, part of it is data view, and then also Todoist integration into a node. And all of those 3 are read-only, right? They are just for reading. I don't enter anything. So everything works, what I'm showing you here. And I think it's a very nice overview to take a look at from my side and then see, okay, that's what I'm working on. That's how far I am, and I can open up the most important things directly from the from Obsidian without going into an app or using any shortcuts, which I'm prone to forget. How did it do that? It uses multi-column markdown plugin, and in edit mode, it doesn't work, as you can see, because it's get going and Todoist and no buttons show up. If you start scrolling down, it will give you the code block for the multi-column. It's dashboard region 1. The ID needs to be unique. Number of columns is 2, and the largest column is standard, which means both columns are the same size. And then I have the header for the first column, and then I have the buttons defined, right? And I just have buttons defined there with daily notes opener. And you see here, this were templater buttons, but also they were replaced. I don't know why they were replaced, because I copied the stuff over from one place to the other, but the same thing happens in the germ file, so I don't really know. It doesn't really matter. You would just need to replace that part here with the templater function, so TP date now, and then specify that you would like to have the current date in there. And the same goes with the date planner, and the central custom node is just space repetition in this case. So that's the first column, and then we end the column, and then you start with the next column, which again a header, and then we have the Todoist task, which I already explained in the Todoist video. I use URIs to talk to the Todoist app, not the plugin, the app directly, and it will bring up, in this case, the add task from there, or it will open up the private project, or it will open up the work project. And then it's the end of multi-column. And this will then create this nice little 2-column approach with the borders around it. So if you want to have that, this is the way to do it. It's a little bit finicky also, not just an edit view. So to get it to work, I did really need to copy the example from the plugin page and then make changes to it step by step, because it was very, very finicky, especially with these buttons. The embedded doesn't work inside of a multi-column in this, so don't try it. I tried it. So that's doing buttons into columns with borders around it and headers, something like that if you want to that. And then again, it's the standard buttons. So this is a link with inherit. Like I said, it inherits the embedded, and the embedded will then open up the embedded page. And that's what we had already talked about. So you can use ID to inherit. You can do in the embedded to add those things. And if you click on it, nothing will happen because it is in theory adding text, right? But you cannot do it. So it really depends on the buttons you want to do. But there are at least 3 ways to do it. No, 4. One is to use inline buttons by default. Then inline buttons in callouts, inline buttons in the embedded, or inheritance. And when you have in the embedded, you can directly use normal buttons also, which is what I'm doing. And I'm using, like I said, then something like open graph, so any commands or open nodes or something like that. I don't have any add text or anything in it embedded. Which is, like I said, one of the limitations there. Yeah, I think that's it, really. It's a longer video, but it's also a nice plugin. There is a blog post for this video, like always, and then there I have described it. You have the code. You can download the vaults if you like, again, for the code in there. And we also talked about the quirks you have with buttons. One of them is that you need to add the line you know, the below the button ID, that you can spam the stuff, that templater is sometimes overwritten, and that inline button only works with read mode. I think that most of the things will be overcome when the developer starts coding buttons again. At the moment, he's doing data view and templater. So I think he's doing that later on again. So what do you think? Do you have any other examples for buttons, cool buttons to use, or other workarounds to the ones I showed you here? And also, do you have a specific need, and how did you overcome that? And one thing I forgot up to now is that you could probably also use JavaScript with buttons by creating a new node with templater, and in that template you then execute the JavaScript. That might also work if you do an append or prepend of text with a template and templater. Let me know if you try that out, if it works or not. I haven't, because I don't need that functionality, and it just came up when I was browsing through comments and everything from that plugin. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you next time. And take a look at the other videos I linked, the embedded and Todoist, and perhaps take a look at the blog post, which describes the plugin a little bit more in detail. Take care. Bye.